Hi everybody. I am in the process of finishing my Wingspan shawl by Kylie Vey. I have completed 5 of these tips so far, so I thought I'd show you how to do one. I did learn some things, a little bit on YouTube, and then trial and error. I did have to rip my first one back once, but it's not all that much knitting, so I would probably recommend on your first one or two, until you kind of get the groove going, you might want to put in a lifeline, and then if you get to a point where you're comfortable without the lifeline, I'm finding that marking the row before I start the feather tip rows is helpful, because if I lose track of how many rows I've done of each of the rows 77 through 83, I can count from that point up and say, okay, I have 12 rows, so I finished my 3 repeats of 77 and 78. So that might be helpful. You might want to think about doing that. So I can take this off now. I'm done with this feather tip. And this next feather tip, here's my spine stitches. So I'm gonna put my marker in right there. So now the next row will be row 1 of my repeat. I'm using Knit Companion, so you can see that row 77. Oops, scoop this in. 77 and 78. You repeat an additional 2 times for the medium-sized shawl, which is what I'm doing. So we have 3 repeats of that. Rows 79 through 80, same thing. We do a repeat, and then we repeat it twice. And then row 81, 82, and 83, we do once each. And that finishes it up. I'm going to reset my counters. And there we go. So now I'm all set to start knitting. The thing that I really didn't get when I started this was where the actual edge stitch is, and you'll kind of see what I mean when I get there. There's 1 stitch left over. It was on my right needle. I put it back onto my left needle. So this is going to be my knit purl of the one edge of the shawl. So that's going to be this side of the feather tip. And then we go into the repeats, which, the first 6 rows are almost identical to what you've been doing all along. Knit 2 together, knit 1 twice, then your make 1 right, knit, make 1 left, knit, and then knit 2 near the end. 77 and 78, 77 being the right side row, that's going to contain your cable slip slip knit, and then you're going to turn, and 79 through 80 is the same thing, but then at the end you're going to do a cable slip 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 knit. So you're going to decrease 1 more stitch for those 3 rows, and then everything else is just a single row. So this is going to be our, well, like a lot of people say on YouTube, I've never Never done this before. I'm used to having my knitting pretty close to my face. So your knit one, purl one, and we are not going to need that. So now we're going to do our knit two together. Knit two, just like the pattern so far. There's our spine stitch. Make one right. Yep, one. Make one left. And those make ones are a little difficult to do when you do have a lifeline. So just, you know, make sure that you're using a yarn that has enough contrast from your shawl yarn so that you're not accidentally picking up your lifeline to make one. That would be kind of disastrous. Anyway, so this is knit to 2 stitches before edge stitch. So this first one, it's pretty easy to tell the edge stitch, to be honest with you, I think. But then as you get a little further along, it gets a little trickier. But your mantra is going to kind of be that each time you get to the end of a right side row and do your cable slip slip knit or cable slip 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 knit, you are going to leave the previous knit one at the end of your cable slip slip knit or cable slip 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 knit. That is going to get left behind and be one of your bound off stitches, and I'll illustrate that. So here is our edge stitch. We're going to ignore this one, and we need to leave 2 stitches before the edge stitch. Okay, so then we're going to do our slip, our slip 2 together, and then slip 1 back. I hope you can see this. And then there's our slip. And this, that last knit that I did, is our little bugger that always stays behind. It's kind of late to the party and it has to not get worked anymore. So once we have done that, we're leaving one behind. We're gonna flip our work. Now the wrong side rows are just the same as every other wrong side row. Okay, it's gonna be slip, slip, and then purl to 3. So I'm probably going to edit this somewhat because this is going to be awfully tedious, you watching me do wrong side rows. Okay, so now I want to go to 3 before the end. And this is also something that's been repeated in the rest of the shawl. It's a slip 1 front, knit 1, that was our purl before, and then slip 1 front. So that is how the first 6 wrong side rows go. That does not change at all. So let's go back. Knit 1, purl 1, and like always, knit 2 together. We don't like that. This yarn is a little bit splitty and I'm having a hard time seeing it. Okay, there's our knit 2 together, knit, knit. Make one right. Really, am I struggling with seeing what I'm doing? Make one left. I do want to get to this end so I can show you again because it's a little, I think, confusing as far as identifying the edge stitch. So each time you get to the, I'll call it the shawl end, the end where the shawl is, the right side work, the second stitch in from our little clump here is the edge stitch. You can see that this stitch is carried underneath here. This carry of this stitch is what makes the stitch behind it longer, I've decided. Not that that's really what I'm talking about here, but I'm pretty sure that that's what's at the root of what's going on. So we're going to slip one, slip 2, and then slip 1 back. And there's our slip, 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 knit. And there's our keep behind. So each time we finish a right side row, there's going to be 1 stitch that stays behind. And it's going to make, in this size, 11 stitches on the needle when we're ready to bind off, just for point of reference. And it's the same every time. You know, each of these is 19 stitches to begin with. So what I'll do is I'll get to row 80. I'll go ahead and knit to that point. Row 79 is exactly the same as what I'm talking about, but instead of a slip, slip, knit at the end, it's a slip, 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 knit. So you're going to slip 1, slip another one, slip 2, put 1 back on the needle, and then your knit 3 slipped together. So it's the same thing, and it's also going to leave 1 stitch behind each time.